welcome back to the Sanditon Chronicles. I'm your host, Maureen. We're joined again with our co-host, Janice.
Hi.
And we are breaking down episode 5 of Sanditon season 2. One more episode left, and I'm really excited to see where they go with the next episode. I know we have to talk about this one before we can theorize about next one, but I'm really excited to see where it goes.
Yeah, so certainly some things have to happen.
Yes. So go ahead. Remind me. I can't remember the exact scene we open on, because for me it is Esther. I don't remember that's the very first scene that we open on.
No, it opens with Arthur talking to Tom, and he's our ball looks set to be a triumph. Almost all of London joins us. And then, of course, Tom has the sad news. So you want to know what I want to call this episode?
Yes, I do.
Oh, did I use True Colors Revealed last time?
No.
Okay, that's what I want to call it then. True Colors Revealed.
On all parts.
Yeah.
I think Lockhart's still a little bit of a quandary.
Yes, he is.
But
yes, somebody wrote on one of our, on Facebook about Lockhart and how they liked him and everything. I said, it remains to be seen if he is going to be only a fortune hunter.
He's the one who I cannot peg.
Yeah.
I had very firm opinions from the very first episode on all the other characters. And while I enjoy Lockhart's character, I can't get a real feel for if he's good or bad yet. Which is, we're one episode away from the end and I still can't figure it out. So that's got to be good writing and good acting, right?
Yeah, both. Yes.
So Arthur is all excited about the ball, and Tom tells him they're not bringing stuff in, they're getting it away because they won't do anything until the army pays. And what a horrible position to be put into. Your ball is like that night. And all these people are coming, all these people are expecting, even if you had to cancel right then, like it takes time to travel from London to where they're at. So
yes.
People are going to come no matter what.
Yeah, that's right.
So
and the thing is,
Tom.
And the thing that Arthur is saying before he gets the news clearly in his head, he says, so many men of consequence, any one of tonight's company could prove prospector. We could even dare to dream of escaping our debt to Eliza. Here, Arthur's very hopeful, and Tom tells him the shopkeepers will not supply us until the army pays its debt.
Yeah. And so Arthur is constantly looking for ways to pay back the debt to Eliza in safe ways, but are still creative ways. So like he was always against the military because he understood them to not be safe. He understood them to not be a guaranteed money source, but Tom could not get out of his head. Permanent barracks, 5,000 pound government stipend. Couldn't get out of his head. But Arthur here, he's looking at all these other angles, and he's just, I'm glad that in this episode, Tom, and we saw a little bit of it last episode, but really in this episode, Tom is giving Arthur a lot more credence because Arthur has deserved that this entire season.
Season. Yep.
And it's even Arthur suggesting that he tells Mary.
He does, and he's the one. I mean, I love when he says, that. So Tom tells him Colonel Lennox is never going to make good on the shopkeeper's desk until I pay him. I'm not sure he even would then, but. And Arthur says, now is not the time to gamble. Those were your words, were they not? And then he tells him how bad he made him feel,
for doubting Colonel Lennox.
Yeah, that's right. And that's when he says, as we're saying, does Mary know? And then you must talk to her. And I love Arthur.
Yeah. And even though Arthur is sincerely hurt by this, not just by Tom gambling when he said that one of our other ideas, which were not, I mean, a theater's actually, entertainment's a pretty foolproof way to earn money. So his ideas weren't like even a gamble, really. There were things that people had said in the past that they wanted in the town. Even Sydney said they need entertainment. So for Arthur, he was hurt by that, but he was also hurt by Tom hiding the money from him. And he was also hurt that Tom trusted Lennox more than he even trusted Arthur. So even though Arthur is sincerely hurt, hats off to Turlough, because I started to get emotional when I looked at his face and you could see he was about to cry. Like it was just,
I know.
So good. But the very next thing he said is, I will speak to the shopkeepers.
I know. He's the one who's going to try and take the bull by the horns and solve the problem.
And again, that's what he's been doing all season. Even when the cow, or they lost the elephant, he went and found the horse. So even though Arthur is so hurt by Tom's actions, Arthur proves not only his loyalty, but his quickness over and over again. by, even though he's hurt, being willing to go out and help Tom.
Right. And then when Tom kind of mopes around and Arthur shows back up with Mary saying, come on, you got to get dressed for the ball. And Tom's like, it's been saved. Even then, you know, he's like, how did you do it? And he's like, because up until recently, I was a very good customer of the baker, you know, which, you know, is because of the sugar boycott that he's not as good a customer.
Yeah.
And he says, you know, as luck would have it, you know, so he convinces him, and the baker convinces everybody else, which is wonderful. And so they've given him 3 days grace. Now, is that going to bite him in the rear in the next episode? We'll find out.
Well, it depends too on the people from London. If they start spending money, maybe there's that influx that they could have that could hold them over a little longer. So that's a possibility too. And that's where Tom says, Arthur, you are a marvel. Truly, you are a marvel. And I love every single time Tom gives Arthur a compliment because he needs it.
Yes. Well, and he deserves it. Yeah.
Yes. And that was
Definitely.
when Tom did tell Mary, because she had come in there and it was after the whist game, whatever. She came back to Tom and she had said, you know, Lady Denham told me that they just leave it a puff of smoke. And that's when Tom tells her that they won't repay until I repay my debts. And she says, what debts? He said, and I did have a little sympathy for Tom here because Lennox did hoodwink him.
Yes,
Lennox
he
did prey on Tom's dependence on him staying and Tom's dependence on his favor. Lennox intentionally preyed on that. And Arthur called that out too, because even Tom was like, I don't know how it happened. And Arthur said, that's what he does. Right. He's a colonel. He is well-versed in strategy.
That's right. Yep. He set you up, obviously.
And because that first time, you know that I don't know how he did it, but I feel like Lennox let him win that first time.
Right. Well, yeah, we don't know. I mean, it's, you know, it could have been a whole scam.
Exactly. When he was talking to Mary and she was like, have you learned nothing from last year? Did you learn nothing? And he says, well, he hoodwinked me. I was unprepared and all these other things. And that's when she says, after everything Sydney sacrificed for you.
Right. It finally comes out.
I'm so glad it did.
Yeah. And she says, did you not put it together? You know, didn't you put it together that Sydney and Charlotte were in love and yet he married Eliza to save you? And it's like it finally hits Tom, which is why he then is moping around before the ball.
That's a testament to Tom's character too, that he was devastated by that.
Right.
Because
absolutely.
He even told Arthur that he was looking so hard to find someone who had the qualities that Sydney had.
Right.
And he thought he found it in Lennox.
Right.
So the fact that he was looking for that and then he finds out that it was him who actually destroyed his brother's happiness.
Yes.
I think we're going to see Tom take that fairly difficult. And we do throughout the rest of the episode. I mean, Tom's kind of ruined the whole episode. Except for his excitement over there's going to be a ball. He had that moment of excitement, but then even at the ball, we see him just unhappy and miserable.
What's good is when the trio of ladies, Charlotte and Georgiana and Allison arrive at the ball, he said, you know that Tom has taken it to heart when he says to Charlotte,
pulls her aside to say it.
Yeah, Sydney would want to see you dance again, and so do I. You know, and it's like the first time she can have that he's acknowledged it, and at least he's acknowledging it in a way that she knows. Yeah, that he knows.
And both of them got, and you could tell that because both of them got emotional. They both got teary-eyed when they were saying it.
Right.
Again, kudos to the actors. I mean, I can't do that on command.
No, they're amazing. Really are.
There's a lot of things right at the beginning that were resolved. And then we also see Allison and Charlotte. I want to dig into that a little bit first. Where Allison is packing her bags to leave in a huff. Can't bear to be here anymore. The love of my life was not the love of my life. Like, can we recognize now that he was actually not the love of your life? Allison, can you recognize that now? So she's packing to leave and Charlotte's trying to tell her, you have other reasons to stay here like me. And she says, my sister, the governess, who I never see.
Right.
And then tries to convince Charlotte to go back with her. The part that really bothered me, about the scene, and it's been my consistent complaint against Allison, is part of her naivete. But when Charlotte's trying to tell her your heart is more resilient than you give it credit for,
right?
She says, "Yes, I know that's why you're staying too, sister." So, what are you talking about? Why am I staying?
You've been trying to hide it. Yeah.
Yes,
No.
you cannot hide it from me. I'm not trying to hide anything. Colonel Lennox is a good man. Why? Well, because he has a red coat on. Why is everyone shoving her at Lennox? Even Georgiana.
I know.
Not give Colonel Lennox a try. Why should she give him a try? Because he gave her some vague warning that showed only him in a good light, didn't give a whole story, and he wears a red coat. That's all I can.
Well, they don't really even know about the story.
I know,
but it's because they just think they're the military. They're worth something, I guess. Anyway,
yeah. And I do know that they really do worry about Charlotte not ever, but because she's a governess, and that's typically once you start a governess, you remain a governess. Like that's right. That's your life's trajectory, unless some guy deigns to marry you, which doesn't happen very often.
Unless you're in The Sound of Music.
Or a lot of Jane Austen stories.
Which actually was a true story. There the governess did marry.
But it's rare, especially in that time period. In the 1800s, It was rare because the governess position was lowly. The governess position was for spinsters.
A servant. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And so that was her life's trajectory. So they wanted her to find that love. They wanted her to be happy, and they knew that she wouldn't be happy as a governess. And honestly, I don't think she would be happy as a governess permanently. I don't think Charlotte would be.
Probably not, but
she would make do with it.
Right. But as she said, she just didn't want to be in the power of a man.
Yeah. And I think I get that when you're married in that time, all the husband has all the say. Mm-hmm. Unless you marry a good man.
Like Babington.
Exactly. Who does not lord his position over you or his gender over you or his sex over you. It's equal partnership. And that's a trope of Jane Austen's. That's Darcy and Elizabeth. That is Marianne and Edward. That is her trope. And so that's what I think would happen here. So if you marry a good man, a decent man, you're not putting yourself in his power unless you're saying that if he dies, you're crushed like that. Right. But that is not the power of a man necessarily. That's of a love. I'm sure if Allison died, she'd be really wrecked too.
Oh yeah. Uh-huh.
So I think I think she's coming to realize that a little bit more as we see towards the end of the episode.
Right. And shortly after that scene, I don't know if you were going there or not, but shortly after that scene with Charlotte, when she was trying to convince Allison to stay and Allison was trying to convince her to go, then we see her just sitting with Mary for a little bit, and then a scarlet coat arrives.
Before that, that scarlet coat is talking to another scarlet coat at the army camp.
Oh yeah, and he's trying to convince
Fraser.
Fraser is trying to convince Carter to do the right thing, to apologize for his behavior.
The most annoying thing about that conversation is you can't want her to spend the rest of her summer in Willingdon. Where she's from. Oh.
Yeah.
You literally knew nothing about this woman at all. You made no effort to know anything about her at all.
What I want to know is how is it those two other officers who were sitting there could totally ignore that conversation?
I was watching that today too as I was doing my rewatch.
But they totally ignored it. But anyway, so then he comes to talk to her himself. But of course, she at first thinks it's going to be Carter and won't see him. And then of course, Mary realizes it's Fraser and lets him in. Brings him in.
But the reason that Fraser went is because what he was saying to Carter is honor demands that you give her an apology. That's what she deserves, is a full apology. And Carter says to him, come to terms with her leaving. I have to. And then he walks away, refusing to own up to anything that he said or did, refusing to offer any sort of what is the word I'm looking for here?
Consolation.
Consolation. That's what I want to say. Yes. Consolence was the only word that was coming to my mind. I knew that wasn't a word. But any form of consolation, any form of anything at all, just leaving this girl that he supposedly loved, who he shamed and embarrassed to the point she felt she had to flee. And he just couldn't bring himself to do it because it would mean more to his pride.
Well, and as Fraser pointed out, it was all about him.
Yep. Exactly.
That's all he saw. And so I love it later in the episodes when after she decides to go to the ball. And at the ball, they walk into this room where he is talking, has like 4 women around him.
All fawning over him.
Yeah. And she walks up to him and really lets him have it and just says, I'm hoping that this will make you think before you hurt another girl, you know. And he wants to make up and dance with her. And she's like, I will not dance with you.
How stupid is this guy?
That's a big ego.
Yes, because even in that, she said, you wouldn't even come to apologize. Captain Fraser had to do it on behalf of you.
Right. Why
would she give you the time of day?
And that was such a good scene when Fraser and Allison were walking down the beach. And,
yeah, I love that.
You know, and he says that Carter didn't even know he was there. And she says, well, let's talk of Captain Carter no more then. You know, that was, and then he says some really wonderful things to her.
Yeah. He was saying that he wanted her forgiveness for his part in the deception. And she was saying, I would be uncouth basically or churlish to not forgive you. You did not do this.
Yeah.
So, but she also brings up that he completely made up the war stories. And that's where Fraser says, no, he didn't make them up. He just borrowed them.
And then she realizes it's his story.
And his response, instead of, yeah, that was me. Those battles were all my glory. He said, it doesn't matter now. He's so humble. And I love Fraser. I love him.
Yeah. Yeah. And I love the way they have a little banter and tease each other. And and also then at the ball, when he walks up and stands behind her and stands beside her and says something like, you know, that she'd been abandoned again or I don't remember.
Abandoned and longing for friends again.
Yeah, something. Yeah. And she's like, oh, you always have the right words. You know? And so it's great. And they're when they dance, it's very meaningful.
And he's even like, because in the midst of that, he even says that you look the most beautiful here. And she says, surely you're mocking me again. This is the most simple dress in the room.
Yeah.
And he says, there's natural beauty, real beauty does not need adornment. Simple does not mean, what did he say? Simple does not mean plain. Yeah. And so, and he said, in all honesty, you have never looked lovelier. So he balances out his true feelings with making her laugh and making her smile. And then when they're in the dance, he's still ribbing her a little bit. And she says, oh, how I'll miss your humor.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Well, presumably she decides to stick around at least
so. She has to.
The next episode.
Because clearly that dance was meant to like echo the Sydney Charlotte dance from episode 6, season 1. With the focus on their hands. Obviously it's not the gold dance, but they're focused on, because they zoomed in on their hand placement, they slowed things down for them. They focused on their staring into each other's eyes and their laughter. And so they focused on all the right things to indicate what we expect is coming now.
That the hearts have been changed, or the heart has been changed. Yeah.
And then you see Carter watching from across the room. Like, you clearly didn't love her in the first place.
Right.
Get over it and move on. Go to one of your other 5 women who are fawning over you right now.
Yeah, it's all about his ego. And he's not the only military man with that issue.
No. So Colonel Lennox says to Fraser, wish me, and even when him fixing his coat, I was irritated.
I know. Yes.
Tom Weston Jones plays that part so well that I just want to hit him.
Yep. He has it covered.
And wish me luck, Fraser.
With my Miss Haywood. You know.
Hopefully my Miss Haywood will give me a more favorable response than Carter's.
Yeah. Yeah. So do you want to go? I was wondering if we wanted to talk about Esther and all the denims. You know?
Let's dig into that.
So the first thing we see is, what we see Esther writing a letter to Babington.
So sad.
And she says, it has been weeks since your last letter. I cannot account for your silence. I beg you to put my mind at ease. I am taking Dr. Fuchs' tincture to make me stronger so I can be the woman you deserve. Please send word as soon as you can that you have not forgotten your loving wife. All the time, Edward is refilling the laudanum bottle. And I had, of course, heard of laudanum, anytime you watch a period piece like this, but I finally looked it up. And it's an alcohol solution containing morphine prepared from opium and formerly used as a narcotic painkiller. Well, yeah, and addictive.
Super addictive.
Yeah.
Back in that time, people would get laudanum addictions and it got real bad.
So no matter how bad we thought Edward was last season, he's way worse this season.
He can't redeem himself for me.
No, I agree.
There's no way.
Too bad there's not a battle for him to die in.
I know. I would love to see that. Because last season, when we were doing our theorizing, we're doing all of our episode recaps and our character spotlights, I was so hoping for redemption arc for Edward. And now there's no way. You can't hurt my girl like that and be better. Nope. There's no coming back for Edward. None.
Yeah, his honestly true colors really describes how it came on.
And when I always want to call her Carol, when Clara finds out he's poisoning her, he said, "You agreed to this. Why are you shocked?" "I didn't agree to poison her." And he said, that's when she said, "She's taking that to have a child so she can have a child. I've never known, this is too much cruelty, even for you, Edward." And then he gets in her face real close and says, "I'm all the more glad the fact that she can have a child. And if Babington would abandon her, all the better." And that's when Clara realizes, this is not just about your son and getting the money for this. This is about your revenge. And he says, "She broke my trust, and for that there are consequences."
And she said, he says that to her, like, "Don't you dare break my trust. Yes. There will be consequences."
Because he says it right before he grips her arm real hard and says, "Esther will be at the ball. Make sure of it." Claire's clearly terrified.
Oh yeah. And I mean, so what she needs to do is remove that bottle.
Yes.
And just make it disappear and not say anything and just claim ignorance. I don't know what happened to it. I mean, it's you feel for her because she and Esther are trying to be in a better place. And he is just adding fuel to the fire. And what deceit.
And you could tell there was something like that kept saying at the screen every time she's on there, "Have a redeemable moment, Clara. Have a redeemable moment." Because she wanted to say something every time even at the ball, he handed her that wine glass and you could tell it was laced with laudanum because the way that she was looking at it. And the fact that it was Edward who handed it to her, obviously he put something in it. So even then, like she was watching her and you could tell on her face, she was concerned. She wanted to stop it. But she felt powerless to stop it.
Yes. No, that's right.
But I'm hoping that the next episode, we will see her say something or do something. I also held out hope that Dr. Fuchs would notice, but then I got mad at him this episode.
The only way it would be is if he went and actually smelled what was in there or tasted
it. Also, if you looked at if her glove was pulled down, he could have seen her arm. But the way that she was sweating, the way that she couldn't keep her eyes open. I get this is how doctors worked at that time. I understand that, but it was really frustrating to say the negative messages she's hearing from her bared womb. Oh
I know.
Gosh. Yeah. I have hopes because Fuchs has been bet on and all of his things that he said and all the things he's done. So I thought, okay, be a miracle worker here. Just figure it out. And then he didn't.
But he doesn't. But he doesn't want to be accused of not practicing good medicine, and it wasn't his fault what was happening.
And I don't think that I think if he found out what it was, I think he would say it because I think Dr. Fuchs is a fairly honest man.
Oh, I agree. I absolutely agree. I don't know how they're going to break it, but something has to happen.
Part of me is hoping that Edward ticks off Colonel Lennox somehow, because clearly we know that Colonel Lennox is not a guy who's going to handle that very well. So I kind of hope that he deals with Edward in some nasty way. And then through that, we find a bottle of laudanum on him. And then they use connect the dots and then smell Esther's bottle. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is what it is.
Yeah, I don't know.
That's what I hope for. I want to see Edward come to a very bad end. And it's like, because I love Jack Fox, and I really was hoping.
Yeah, I guess we're going to have to watch something else to see him be a good guy.
But he also, when they were at, when we first see Edward there, first of all, I'm a little shocked that Lady Denham is spending so much time with Claire and Edward. I get Lady Dedham says it's called making the best of a bad situation, but I'm still surprised how much time she's spending with them and how much she's allowing them back into her confidences, and that she's paying for the wedding.
Well, and don't you think it has everything to do with not wanting to have a scandal?
Oh, that is what it is. But I'm still like, you can still not have a scandal, have them get married, and not spend so much time with them in your direct presence.
Well, they're obviously showing up saying this is what it's going to cost, and and yeah, I don't know.
I'm just surprised at how much she's around them. That's all. Because I know why she's doing it. It makes sense because you do want to avoid that scandal. And plus, Edward announced it to the entire garden party at Lady Dedham's house.
Right.
So she probably felt encumbered by that. But I just, the amount of time she spends with them privately is surprising to me. But Edward and Clara and Lady Dedham and Esther are all sitting in there. Lady Dedham comments on how pale Esther is. And she says, I cannot account for it. She coos over George. Her and Clara have a little smiley moment. And Lady Dedham offers the worst advice you can give to Esther, is that maybe maybe Babington ran out of things to say. It happens in every marriage. After 9 months, that's the advice you're going to give this poor woman? And Edward says, oh, I cannot believe that. It must just be his business affairs that are keeping him away. There's no way he would stray from you, Esther.
And she's like,
he's not you, Edward.
He is not you. Yeah, that's right. It's really painful to see what Esther's going through right now. And Clara as well.
Yeah. Because even Esther says, when Edward says to her at the ball, I don't know why you can't just rejoice in our joy. And she says, Clara has no more love for you than I do. She is merely your captive.
Yep, that's right. And when Dr. Fuchs is looking at Esther, then Edward is whispering evil and poison in Lady Denham's ear. And why is she even gonna? I mean, she talks. She doesn't say she's buying it, but she's persuadable.
Yeah, exactly.
We've seen that before.
And I agree. I think that's part of my concern with her spending so much private time with them, because in the beginning she had said that she thought he might be reformed. She still doesn't trust him, but she thought he might be reformed. And it was Clara's pregnancy that made her realize that he is no more changed than when he left her house.
Well, except for the fact he finally admitted it and did the right thing and asked her to marry him. But the thing is, see, ever since he has been giving Esther the laudanum, Lady D has not had Esther's voice of reason talking in her ear, opposite of Edward and Clara to some extent. But then it's really heartbreaking when they come back from the ball and Esther is just trying to comfort that baby, and Edward turns it into a whole big thing and accuses her of hurting the child, and which is, and then even has Lady D believing the possibility.
And Clara too, because that Clara knows that Esther would hurt her, but a mother's heart when her child is, and or Clara's very well aware of what Esther's been being given.
Yeah, and now that Clara has actually bonded, acknowledged her child and is wanting to care for it, which wasn't that for the first few episodes.
And that was because of Esther.
Yep, that's right. Yeah, that is one cliffhanger that I hope they put in a better spot next episode.
I feel like we won't get a resolution there until next season, because I don't know how they can tie it up in one episode.
Yeah, probably not. But even if they started, something happened. So if the army gets moved away, that will hopefully stop Edward from interrupting the mail, at least.
Yeah.
And being able to resupply the laudanum so that Esther can return to herself.
But do you think that Edward would get leave to stay because he's preparing for his wedding with his bride, and Lady Denham would sanction that?
I don't know. We'll have to wait and see. Yeah, but I don't know. The Colonel, he hasn't paid him.
Well, Edward also hasn't paid his commission, so it's nothing lost if he loses his commission.
No, that's what I mean. As Edward has not paid the Colonel for his commission.
Yeah.
So I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see where they go with this.
Even after the whist game too, when she went down there to play whist, and Mary is obviously concerned because she sees that Esther clearly looked insane at that, and she's like, I won, did I not? And Claire had to say, no, we're on the same team. that she walks upstairs and Edward goes up there.
Oh, I know, that is the worst scene of the whole time.
I was so mad that because he knew that he's literally poisoning her bit by bit by bit.
Which tells you that he never loved her.
No,
ever.
Never. She was always a game piece to him. She was always an accessible thing that would constantly flatter him. There was another way to guarantee something. It was his fail-proof plan.
Yeah. And he just is a sociopath. There's another name that I'm thinking of.
Psychopath?
No.
He's a narcissist for sure.
Narcissist. That's what I was trying to think of. Edward is definitely a narcissist. There's no two ways about it.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Like a huge narcissist.
And I
almost
don't know,
not even a real person.
Yeah. No, that's right. And I hope at some point Clara really realizes that and figures a way out of it, because
that's what it's going to come down to. Is she needs to figure out. And I think Lady Denham's going to have a hand in it. I think that how it's going to have to work out is Lady Denham's going to have to find out that Edward is poisoning Esther, and Lady Denham's going to have to save Esther and Clara both from this.
Yeah.
But I like that we're going to get to see Lady Denham be a hero. I really think that's how it's going to come down to, because Clara will be unafraid, especially now that Edward put it all in her head. She will be unafraid to leave him if there's a chance that she might have to raise her child in absolute squalor.
Yeah,
she won't do it.
True.
So there has to be some sort of guarantee of financial security, and that can only come from Lady Denham.
Yeah. Well, unless we think
Babington
this especially right. We think this especially because we know that Mark Stanley is not going to show up as Babington.
Exactly. If we knew he could come back, then that would be my guess.
Yeah. I mean, I think word would have leaked out if he had shown up for any of the filming. So, I mean, he could send someone on his behalf, but
I think it's almost cruel that they're giving us this storyline and we don't get to see Babington be the hero for his wife, who he loves so dearly.
Yep.
It's almost cruel. And that's not the writer's fault exactly. I mean, Mark Stanley's busy, but I want to see him be Babington again and protect his wife as he protected her from Edward before. Because the last thing he said is, or not the last thing, but one of the last things he said to her in episode 7 was, "You will not be his victim."
Right. So the real question, one of the real questions is, are her letters actually getting out of the house?
No, I don't think so.
You think the servant's interrupting him, but at some point you think, I don't know if that's bad. You'd think he would send somebody to check on things if he's never getting letters.
That's exactly it. Unless Edward might be penning a different letter using her seal, but I can't see that happening.
I don't think so.
Because that was my thought too, is because the nature of her letters, as Babington, Edward has to know this, that as Babington doesn't reply, her letters are going to get more frantic, questioning, why aren't you reaching out to me? And Edward can't let those get to Babington, because then Babington's going to be like, okay, wait, now why aren't you receiving my letters? So this is a problem.
Yeah.
I mean, of course, he could be, if he was there, he could be convinced that she's going mad, but Babington's not there. And when he last saw his wife, she was not mad.
No, and that's not the Esther he knows. As was said in the first episode.
I don't think Edward can let those get out, because common sense would dictate that it's going to be more frantic of, why aren't you responding to me? Why are you absent?
Not good that Lady D has servants that are willing to do his bidding.
No, but of course, Lady Denham is Lady Denham, so servants aren't really going to be loyal to her. No,
because she's not very respectful most of the time. Yeah.
But I wanted to discuss a little just what Edward says when he goes up into Esther's room. He says, "Esther, I've never seen you in such a state." And she says, "I'm just a bit dizzy is all." And he says, "I know you more than anyone else on earth, or better than anyone else on earth." And she says, "Why is this happening to me?" And then he pulls up her sleeve, and that's where we see the scratches. And he says, "If you could just see yourself." Well, I think that's when she says, "Why is this happening to me?" And then he leans forward and he dares to kiss her on the forehead.
I know. Which tells you how out of it she is.
Yeah, because she was actually being kind to him, asking him, "Why is this happening, Edward?" There's no way she would have done that.
And then, back at the ball, I mean, he dropped that glass. She had her hands nowhere near it.
That's what I was saying too. Come on, Lady Denham, be smarter.
She just wasn't looking that way. And I don't know if Clara caught on or not, but
Clara did, yeah. because she was watching it in kind of horror. And then when Edward gave his glass, he said, "Here, take mine." And obviously you knew that was going to have a long minute, not just because Edward was carrying it, but they zoomed in on the wine glass as he was walking and then zoomed out. And then he saw Edward was holding it. So you knew that something was going to be in it. He offers it to her. Clara takes her away to clean her up and help her out. And I was really disappointed that it was Clara who rehanded her the glass of wine. Like, no.
I don't think she realized it until she rehanded it to him, because of the way that Edward was so concentrating on it.
That's true, because that's when she got the weird look on her face, when she turned and saw Edward watching them.
Yeah, I don't think she realized it ahead of time. Maybe, too bad she couldn't find a reason to take it away again.
Mm-hmm. And that was when Edward was pulling Lady Denham aside and said, "I didn't want to cause waves, but Esther told me that her father or her grandfather, which I don't remember if it was grandfather
on her father's side,
spent 30 years in a madhouse." Like, and that's when Lady D says, "Nonsense. She's not mad. She's just confused. She doesn't want to believe." You can tell in the tenor and the way that Annie Reid delivers that line that she is not sure she believes what she's saying.
Oh, a little bit. Yeah. I mean, she still isn't convinced, but obviously
she doesn't want to believe it either.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then they pull her out of there and she says, "Let's go before you embarrass yourself further." Because what happened, I mean, that must have been a pretty strong dose of laudanum, because she was like delirious walking through the dance floor, shoving people aside as she when Edward caught her, her eyes were almost like rolling back in her head and she like was falling over. So she had to have a pretty strong dose of that.
And he says, "Too much wine." Oh, right. Yeah.
And he made sure that everyone knew she dropped the glass of wine. He made sure everyone saw her drink more wine after that. So he had that ready.
And that's exactly what he was after when he told Clara that she had to come to the ball.
Mm-hmm.
It's not good.
No, but anyway. I did like in the beginning, we could see her lucid and she was saying to Lady Denham, "I can't believe you're agreeing to this farce." And that's when she told Edward what she had to say to him. So that in her, when she's right, she still understands fully and completely that Edward is up to no good. He's harming Clara. And that's why I hope that Clara is going to be the one to stand up and say something to Lady Denham. And that might be the key. Maybe Clara is going to tell Lady Denham, "This is what Edward's doing." And Lady Denham will be able to intervene, because Esther was even standing up for Clara right then. Right. If she is your captive, she does not love you. You are keeping her under your control.
Right. Yep. Yeah, that's right. Well, yeah, it's only when she's under the influence of the drug that she has any problem.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But we also see Arthur a little earlier when he's making his rounds. And I like that we got a little glimpse of him talking to the shopkeepers on behalf of Tom. Right. But this is where Miss Hankins is walking with Georgiana saying, "Well, I hope the portrait doesn't take too long because I have this and I have this and I have this and I have this and I can't be late." And I think Georgiana's just sick of hearing it.
Well, and then she wants to get away from her. Yeah. And she spies Arthur and she's like, I hope you could take me for the sitting. We're late for the sitting. And yeah, so.
And he says, I have to have a very important meeting in 1 hour. Right. Fine. Let's go for that hour.
It won't take. Well, and I know that he says, I know that Lockhart would like to see you. Mm-hmm. And he's like, well, okay. You can see the look on his face. He gives in.
Yeah. And then they just leave. Poor Miss Hankins there. Don't tell her anything. And she turns around and everybody's gone.
I know. Yeah, that's right.
Poor Miss Hankins.
Yeah.
But they arrive there. They're taking the portrait. Georgiana's hair is up. And then Arthur suddenly realizes, oh no, I have to leave. Tries to convince Georgiana to go with him. Georgiana says, "Can't you just leave us here?" Like, no, Miss Hankins and Mary will not like it if I leave you on chaperones. And Lockhart, and this is why I'm not sold on Lockhart being completely good.
Well, that's not the only reason.
This is the kicker for me right here, was how he manipulated Arthur into getting him to leave Georgiana with him.
Yeah, that's right.
There are other things, but this was like the solidifying thing, because what he's saying to Arthur is, as a man who loves art, surely you can understand that there's something that happens between an artist and the piece when they're alone. Surely you, as a refined man of the arts, can understand that.
He is totally a flatterer.
Mm-hmm.
Lockhart is.
Yeah.
And a manipulator that way. Mm-hmm. He has, unlike the other gentlemen that have proposed to Georgiana and are pretty direct about it, he's very devious about it. I mean, he teases her, asks about her hair, and then she explains why she wants it down. And then he asks about because she said that's what my mother gave me, and he says, what did your father give you, knowing full well that she has all this money from her father.
But her response is an education
and education and right, and an inheritance. And he said, had I your inheritance, I would paint and eat and swim and travel
and then he gets very close to her face when he says, and stay in bed. Yeah. He's touching her on the chin. He's like an inch away, not even an inch away from her face when he says that.
Yep.
Clearly knowing what he's doing.
And then he'd have to take no more commissions. And she's like, well, that's what this is. And he says, don't you know I'm doing this for love? Creepy.
Yeah. Because I think Lockhart is as odd as he portrays himself to be. I don't think that's a farce, but I do think the way that he is connecting with Georgiana has a lot of farce to it.
Yeah.
I think it has a lot of...
he might genuinely like her, but it's convenient that she has all this money.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and that she has opened up to him and explained why she, why she has been keeping a mask on, not wanting to let people in. And then he worms his way in, and then at the ball, after dancing and being interrupted by Esther, that situation, he takes her outside and asks how long she plans on staying in Sanditon. And of course she says, if it was up to me, it would be until I am of age. But if the Parkers have their way, it will be until I'm married. Mm-hmm. And he says, she says, when are you leaving? How long are you staying? And he says, I'm leaving tomorrow when your painting's finished. And she's like, were you going to tell me? And he says, this is me telling you.
Yeah.
And then come with me. And she says, as your concubine? And he says, as my wife.
Yeah.
And fortunately, they are interrupted by Mary at this point.
I think Mary's intuition is typically fairly good.
Yep.
And she's been against Lockhart from the beginning. And I think that should be very telling to a lot of people. Because Lockhart is entertaining. I love when he's on screen because he makes me laugh. And I think he's funny. And I love Alexander as an actor. I think he's awesome. He's funny himself. So I enjoy watching him on screen. But I think that his character has always seemed a little bit too on the nose when it comes to Georgiana. And I think that even when they first walked into the ball, she looks up and he's talking to 3 other women. And he turns around and looks at her and smiles. Oh, it looked like 3, I thought.
No, there's a big, you can't hardly see because there's all this other stuff in front of him. I think it's just one other woman.
Well, they make eyes as she goes in there, and then he meets her in the ballroom, and he says, how was your evening? It's passable. Well, let's dance. I don't think my chaperone will feel very good about it. It's just a dance. And then he strips off his jacket and throws it. So no other man in there does that before a dance. So just again, drawing more attention to look how free I am. Look how easy it is to be me, and look how little I care. And I feel like it's true. I don't think he does care what other people think, but I think that lends itself poorly to marrying someone for their fortune as well. I don't care what people think.
Right. He doesn't care what people think, but he sure likes the attention.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that's another part of it too.
He does a lot of it just for the attention.
Mm-hmm.
And so I don't know if you recall this or not, but when they were filming these episodes last summer, he left, and then he did a post about that he was called back to do more to do something in season 3. Oh. So it'll be interesting. He thought he was done, but no, they brought his character back.
Ooh, so okay.
It'll be interesting.
So they're not going to end up together then, clearly. If he did,
well, at least not immediately, 3. I don't think. Yeah.
But if he thought he was done, unless they did a pretty extensive rewrite, and if he thought he was done after season 2, then something's going to happen next episode.
At least that's what he posted. So we'll see.
And maybe what it'll be is that he is leaving the next day and he wants Georgiana to run away with him because he could use her money to travel and paint and do nothing. Because that was when he was saying that in that scene, it was like he was telling her what he wanted to do with her inheritance, not his own. Right. And it felt like he was saying, when we're together, this is what we're going to do with your money.
Well, and probably that's why she said, as your concubine.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You know, not as a married woman. Although,
but as a married woman, he would have full access, direct access, and all authority over all of her money.
Right. But I'm telling you, I don't know what it was like in the Regency period, but I am certain there were not too many white men that married black women.
No.
Or vice versa. I mean, you know, black men that married white women.
Mm-hmm. Well, I don't think black people were given much credence at all. So I think that they pretty much stayed. I think the races stayed to their races.
Yeah,
because black men and women were not given any sort of refuge in higher society at all. So I mean, if it was a black woman marrying a black man, it was poor.
When Jane Austen wrote this part, she wrote her as a mulatta.
Yeah.
And there were a lot of mulattas that could pass. You know what I mean? And but clearly the way they're doing it with Georgiana, she's not a mulatta, and she is clearly African American. And I don't know the whole history. It'd be interesting when you do your next interview, I hope, with Paula. Mm-hmm. That's a true story she wrote, a historical story she wrote called Belle.
Oh.
Is about a woman who, if I recall correctly from the movie I saw, was mulatta. And she is like Georgiana. She came with I don't know if it was her father, or I think, if I recall the story correctly, her father brought her back to live with his brother, and he went back to wherever he was making his fortune, you know, in South America or wherever it was. And maybe Aruba, I don't remember. But she was in English society, but I don't remember if she married. I know she found a love. I have to see it again. It's probably been 25 years since I saw it.
I know that on Sanderson, they have two different reps. They have the literacy agent, which is Paula Byrne, because she's the Jane Austen aficionado for that. And they also have the historical aspect of it, to try to make sure that the historical aspects are as accurate as they can get them. Of course, you have to, it's unfortunate that I think when people are watching like Sanderson and Jane Austen, like the movies for Jane Austen, they're looking for 100% absolute historical accuracy. But to get people to watch these, you got to add some modernity into it. It can't just be because people aren't watching it all the time for the historical aspects. So, and I think that's one thing I talked to Paula about in my last interview, was that some things require a bit of modernization. You don't go crazy, you don't blow it out there, but there has to be a bit of modernization to it. And I think that's what we're seeing with Georgiana, because my understanding of that time period, and I do want to talk to the historical agent for Sanderson too. I'd really love that conversation. But the people who were mixed race children that were born out of a master having relations with a slave or through a servant or whatever, sometimes they were recognized if the man was decent. Oftentimes they were not. But people who were not mixed race, that were just black, were never acknowledged as anything worth having value. From my understanding of historical accuracy in Regency England at that time, or Regency anywhere at that time.
I can't speak to that. I just know from all the history I've watched that there's no such thing as always. There's always exceptions.
Oh, absolutely. But I mean, the norm for that would be that situation.
Yeah. But I'm really interested because of the story that she wrote that was based on fact, as I recall it.
Yeah, I think it was. I think she was talking about that before.
Yeah. So it'd be interesting to ask her about that. Yeah.
But when Lennox was talking to her, not Lennox, when Lockhart was talking about this stuff, that's what it felt like, that that was the benefit of not caring what society thought, was that he could marry this black girl because she had money. And that would suit him just fine, because he doesn't need to be in the middle of society. He's okay being on the fringes of society. He just wants money to do whatever he wants, whenever he wants, however he wants.
Right. Especially if he's using her money and doesn't have to have commissions, doesn't have to paint for people that he has to bow down to or anything.
Because neither one of them really loved society. And I think that's why he was drawn to her, because she was black, because she was so different, because high society doesn't treat her well because she's a black woman who has money, and he doesn't care for society because he doesn't care what people think. So they're both being on the fringe.
But even when he first, we not when he goes swimming, but when we first see him come into the room where they're having tea, and he's checking her out and acting like he's not checking her out, I think he must have heard a lot about her. I think he
Oh,
knew
yeah.
she had money.
I
Yeah.
think before he came there, really, he probably heard a little bit of something, or at least the moment he came there, because Sanditon's not like a sprawling metropolis. It's a small seaside town. So who Georgiana
Right.
was would have preceded her.
Right. But the advantage was that he could swim,
Exactly.
you know,
Yeah.
which obviously he liked. So,
And so I do, well, I enjoy Lockhart's character because he's funny and he's free. I don't trust him with Georgiana.
yep. Yeah, it's a one we're gonna have to wait and see what they do with it.
What I think might happen, because as much as Georgiana doesn't like society because of how they treat her, I think that Otis, the fact that what happened with Otis is going to temper her reaction a little bit with this. But I also think that she might have an inkling when they go to run. My theory is that the next day he's hoping that she'll run away with him, because there's no way that her guardians are going to give her consent to go. There's no way. So he's going to hope that she'll elope with him. And I think that she will regret considering it and stay home, because as much as she does not like society and what they do to her, how they treat her, she also doesn't want to live in a squalid existence on the fringes of society either.
Right.
So
and on top of that, she remembers what happened when she got captured, kidnapped.
Exactly. Yeah.
And you know, so, and her real true friends, who her real true friends are, which are the Parkers and Charlotte. And I think Miss Hankins too is one of those people that are really truly care about her.
Exactly. And where we end the episode, we don't see the result of Mary pulling her away from Lockhart at the ball.
No,
we don't see that. So we don't know if there's going to be a conversation that they have that night that we'll see next episode, or maybe the next morning. Maybe Mary's waiting and watching for her the next morning because she, I mean, it's Arthur. Mary asked Arthur about Lockhart at the dance. And I think Arthur's so good, and he sees the good in people except for Colonel Lennox, which is odd that Colonel Lennox is the only one he didn't see good in. He's accurate, but Mary says, Arthur, you know him better than I do. What do you think of him? And he says, look how he lights her up, Mary. I would trust him with my life.
Right. But he hasn't known him very long either. So,
and what he likes about him is that he brings something out in Georgiana that Arthur has not been able to bring out in her. And that Arthur, and I really think that's the main, I mean, I think he likes Lockhart a lot, but I think what really for Arthur, it was watching how happy Georgiana looked with him. That for Arthur was like, he's the real deal. He's a good guy. Look at what he does for Georgiana.
Yeah. But our hackles are raised when we find out he's going to leave the next day.
Yes.
I mean, if he was a real honest guy, that wouldn't be happening that way.
Yeah. He didn't even tell Arthur, you're not going to tell the rest of the town you're renting a house, and you didn't let anyone know that you're going to leave it. So did you not pay for the house, and that's why you're leaving the next day? So, there's a lot of questions. There are about him. So the other thing we see in the ball is Lady Denham. Well, first at the whist game, Lady Denham is telling Mary all about Ramsgate. And I love that throwback because that's prominent in Pride and Prejudice. So that made me happy. And there was another town she said in there. I can't remember what other town, but she was saying that the military will leave overnight without paying their debts. And basically there's nothing the law can do because they're war heroes. So nobody will do anything about it. Mary goes back and tells Tom, this is what Lady Denham said. They're going to leave in a puff of smoke. And that's what prompts Tom to tell it, because Mary's saying, for the sake of the townspeople, we need to now. And that's what prompts Tom to tell her about the debt. Okay. So we go to the ball. And Lady Denham walks up to Tom and she says, I presume your wife told you. And she said, you guaranteed me. And I told you not to. And Tom actually got a backbone there for a minute.
I know. I thought that too.
I don't recall you ever telling me not to do that. Or I don't recall many protests.
Any warning. She said, I warned you. No, I don't recall any warnings.
I was like, yeah, go Tom. And I think at this point, he's so fed up because he knows that Lennox screwed him on purpose. He knows it. And he knows it was because of his dependence on his money. And I think Tom is just so fed up that he doesn't want to be that person anymore, especially after missing the thing about Sydney and Charlotte. Right. And seeing how he hurt Arthur and seeing how he hurt Mary. I think he's fed up with all of it. And so he doesn't want to bond to anybody for their money. And then she says, what else does she say? I trusted you with my money and your sister-in-law. And he says, well, maybe it was the wrong person to trust.
Yeah. Yes, that's right. And then she's like, just figure it out.
She says, for heaven's sake, what's the matter with you? Find a remedy.
Yeah, that's it. Find a remedy. That was what she said.
But I like that she said, what's the matter with you? Because she was she's used to him being deferent to her, but then it just seemed like, of course, I'm not the right one to trust. And I think for Lady Denham, it was a weakness that stop throwing a pity party.
Yeah.
You talk for a minute, I gotta mute.
Yeah. Yep. That's right. Yep. And Mary's surprised by Tom's reaction as well. Yeah. So now we're going to talk about Lennox.
Yeah. So Tom is missing and Arthur goes to find him. And he says, there you are.
Oh, right. Yeah, that part.
And that's what he discloses, that he was looking for someone to fill Sydney's shoes. And Arthur, oh man, I want to marry an Arthur. I mean, I'm already married, but if I wasn't married, I would want to marry an Arthur because he's just so good and he's so kind. And he looks at Tom and knowing all of Tom's faults and all the stupid things he's done, he said, we'll never replace Sydney, but you have something he never had, brother. You have vision. Sanditon would have been an old fishing town if you hadn't come along.
Right.
Look at what you've done here. Look at the goodness that you've made here.
Right.
And I mean, is there any other way to describe Arthur's goodness? Because I can't keep saying he's so good. There's got to be another word to describe it. I just love him. I love him.
And before, and in season 1, he was more of the comic relief.
Mm-hmm.
And this season, he is just good-hearted,
loyal.
Genuine. Right. Yep.
He's smart.
And he cares about other people. He's very compassionate. You know, he's willing to do the work. Yeah. He's very admirable. So
Lennox at the ball.
Yes.
I accidentally got a little spoiler for that. I was like, what? It was Tahira posted. It was after episode 5 aired for her. You know, she posted on Twitter and I wasn't thinking about it. I looked at the post and she posted the scene and she's like, I have been dreading the scene for weeks. Like, what is, and it's Lennox forcing himself on Charlotte.
Who said this?
Tahira.
Oh, yeah.
Her name. So I was waiting for that the whole episode and I didn't know how it was going to come in, but I was fuming about it for like a week.
Yeah. Yeah. So he comes over and asks for the first dance. And
that was my first problem. He didn't ask her. He said, permit me the next dance. He demanded she give him the next dance.
Permit me the honor. Yeah. Well,
he didn't even say honor. He just said, permit me the next dance.
No, he did. He said, permit me the honor of the first dance.
Maybe I'm just so mad at him that all I heard was permit me the dance.
You were already ready for him. And Allison says she would be delighted.
And Charlotte didn't want to do it.
Not really. But she likes to dance. So she goes ahead and complies. And then he says, it seems so long since the first time we danced together. And Charlotte says, to think how much has happened since that night. And then Lennox says, is it not remarkable how the path of one's life can be so altered in just a few short weeks, Charlotte? And so they go through the dance and he says, it's most agreeable to enjoy your company without fear of interruption by your employer.
Why do you have to bring him up?
He doesn't, but he thinks he does.
He's just sticking the knife in just a little deeper. He thinks he's won.
Right. And then Charlotte says, quite, although I cannot say with certainty how long he shall remain my employer. And Lennox says, I'm glad to hear it. Does that suggest you've been giving some thought of your future, Miss Haywood? And then the dance ends and she sees Allison sitting by herself and she says, excuse me, Colonel, my sister needs me. And which was great that she got away from him.
She was so uncomfortable with that line of questioning. And I'm sorry, because she's no longer a governess, that means that she's thinking she's going to marry you. Man, right. You are a different breed of arrogant.
He is. And then, so do you want to tell the scene up on the...
Yes. So here's the thing. Colburn walks in, right? And Lennox is clearly angry that Colburn has dared to enter this ballroom after he so roundly thought he roundly and soundly ousted him from all society and from all things to do with Charlotte. So you can see on his face, Tom Weston-Jones has a really good mad face.
Yeah.
He's clearly very angry in the background that Colburn has showed up. Charlotte, you can tell, is flustered by it. Not angry, not even hesitant like when Lennox asked her to dance. She's flustered in the same way that she was when she was talking to Lady Susan about Sydney. Okay.
Right.
So Lennox does not like that. And then approaches her afterwards, after some time, and says, let's finish our conversation. And poor Charlotte with the balconies. Don't go to balconies anymore, Charlotte. I know it's technically a staircase and a landing, but don't go to any more balconies. Only bad things happen in balconies. So she's up there and he's saying, all these things about how army life is hard and it's trying. And the presumption of him to say that he's found a place in his state and he took the liberty of looking at it, just assuming she's going to say yes to him. I mean, that is literally a whole new level of arrogant for me. Like just assuming she's going to say yes.
And also, well, probably he sees it as that's how he's going to compete with Colburn. He'll have his own estate. And how does he have the money for his own estate? That's what I want to know.
See, he's a liar. So I don't think he does. I think he just said, I took the liberty of checking it out with no actually intention of actually being there, unless he thought that she had some money from being a gentleman's daughter, which clearly she has no money. So
who knows what kind of money? I mean, if he's collecting all the winnings from all the gambling and not paying their bills, he could have money.
He could, but I think he likes the military lifestyle too much. And I think this was more about getting one over on Colburn than anything else. So I think he would have no bones about if she were to say yes, to then be like, oh yeah, so you're a military wife now. We don't have an estate. We're going to be military spouses. I don't think he would have any bones about being dishonorable there and dishonest.
Hard to know. But regardless, he just is so presumptive and takes her hand and is basically, what's coming, I'm going to propose. She's like,
do you have it written down what he said? Can you read that?
I don't. I don't have it. No, I ran out of time to get that written down.
So he says it so cruelly and so it just makes me mad. But he said something along the lines of, you know what I'm talking about. I'm not sure what you're talking about. You do know.
And she says, and I love what she says, I thought I made it clear I was not interested in marrying. And
his response is, you think I'm not cut out for domestic life. I assure you I am.
Right. And he just grabs her and kisses her. And
but that's because she says, I do not love you. He says, love will grow if you let it, and then forces himself on her.
That's right. Yeah. Right. Like that's really going to help. I mean, come on.
That's and not letting love grow.
And then when she pulls away, he says, don't forget my station. Excuse me.
And he says it while he's gripping her wrist and he's in her face yelling it. Don't forget my station. You've forgotten yours.
Yeah.
Wow. I don't think he's ever been spurned that soundly before. I think he just assumed she would fawn at his feet. He did such a good job showing how much better he was than that stupid Colburn that he just thought, it's in the bag.
Well, and even with Lucy, he's the one who left her, not the other way around.
Yeah, but I'm willing to bet that Lucy, and we don't even know how that happened. I mean, maybe he took advantage of her because she was entranced by him, and maybe she would leave Colburn, and that ticked him off, and maybe he forced himself. So we don't know exactly what happened there. There's a lot of possibilities that could be there.
He left her because she was with child. I mean,
I know, but I'm saying that maybe he forced himself on her because she wouldn't leave Colburn, and so he thought, I'm better than that guy. And then he was like, I don't know.
It could be any of that. It could
be a whole lot of things. So we don't really know. But what you see is that this is mainly about getting the better of Colburn, being the better man, getting the victory over her.
Winning the prize. Yeah, because the first thing he says up on the steps is, I have never been defeated in battle, and I feel conquered by you.
Yeah. Gross.
Yeah.
As he tries to force himself on her, I feel, it looks like you're conquered by her and not the other way around, for sure.
Right. But before we go into what happens right after that, we need to back up.
Yes, we do.
Think? To what happens earlier in the episode with Colburn.
Now, I will say for you listeners, Janice wanted to talk about this earlier, but I wanted to save all the Colburn stuff for last. So that's on me. So we're backing up a bit now.
That's all right. I mean, I'm fine with that. So the first thing we see of them is when she's walking up to Hayrick's house and he's getting on his horse, and she hides behind the tree so she won't have to confront him.
Yep.
And so she's just not really ready to deal with him quite yet.
Because remember, the last thing they had was the garden party.
Right.
So for those of you who are an episode ahead, you might forget that that's the last thing they had.
And at the garden party, his last words were, I forbid you from seeing that man. Well, he has no right to forbid her from anything. No, but because he's the employer, he assumes he does. And so
I don't think it's just that he's her employer that he did it. I think it was really because he knew he was safeguarding her. He just couldn't tell her why. But he did it wrong. He did it in a wrong way, absolutely. But I think the heart was not just, I'm your employer, you listen to me. I think it was because he had feelings for her and he was trying to protect her.
But the head was saying, exactly, I'm in charge, And so we walk in on, Charlotte arrives at Herrick Place and Augusta is playing unhappily.
Just 2 notes over and over and over again.
And Charlotte says, what is this happy tune? And she says, you're right, I'll stop and take pause to apprehend all the wonderful diversions ahead and what I'm sure will be an exquisite day. The woman has sarcasm down so well.
I love the girl who plays Augusta. I really, really do. She's really good at it.
Yes. Yeah, she is very good. Yeah. Mm-hmm. I wonder how old she actually is. Pretty young. I need to look up her name. Yeah. But anyway, and she says, whatever is the matter? She runs out. And then Mrs. Wheatley comes in.
I love Mrs. Wheatley too.
And she says, whatever is the matter? And she says, the ball. She thinks the garden party thwarted any chance of Mr. Colburn letting her attend the ball tonight. And then Charlotte's like, well, actually, she's kind of relating to that. And naturally, for a man of Mr. Colburn's disposition, to be surrounded by a happy company, enjoying lively conversation, I think nothing could be more disagreeable. And I love Mrs. Wheatley. She says, mind your tone. Down.
Yep.
Miss Haywood. Mr. Colburn doesn't deserve to be spoken with such contempt. And she says, forgive me, but what I've seen of the man. And she says, how long have you known him? There is more to Mr. Colburn than you can possibly imagine.
I love
which
that.
Which is good. We like to hear that, And of course, we've seen them in the earlier episode, paying her off on their bet.
Yeah.
Which is an unusual situation for a gentleman and his servant,
And typically, if you've inherited a house, you inherit the staff. Not saying that there isn't turnover in staff, not saying that there hasn't been turnover since he inherited the house, but there's a chance that Mrs. Wheatley has known him since he was a boy.
Right.
So to have that viewpoint and have her say all these good things about him is good.
Yeah. So that puts Charlotte, she's surprised by that response. And because obviously Wheatley's
I think she's confused by the response.
Yeah. And Wheatley's experience is very different from what Charlotte has witnessed, obviously, just from those words. And so then Charlotte goes up to Augusta, who is swinging, right? And she says, Mrs. Wheatley tells me you were disappointed not to be going to the ball. And Augusta says, I never harbored much hope that I would, but it's just another reminder of what I've lost. Yeah. And then she talks about her experience when prepping she would watch her parents get dressed and
dancing on her dad's feet.
Yeah.
And then her mom said something along the lines of what it would be like when they'll be able to do that together out in society, out in public.
It is very sad. You get how much this has upset her and how much she misses of her parents.
Mm-hmm. And then it's not a frivolous thing. It's not just about going to balls. It's about all the things that she had hoped for that was completely ripped away from her when her parents died.
Yeah, what they were planning together.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So the next thing we see is Charlotte knocking on Colburn's open door. And I love
first though, before that, we do see because this is the second time that she's around Colburn. The first time is when she's with Leo, and Leo's asking her all these questions. And she's like, you're exhausted with these questions. Oh. And then Colburn comes in and asks Leonora to leave.
That's right. You're right.
He says, we haven't spoken since. And Charlotte's like, the garden party. Yes.
Right. That's right.
About how he should, something along the lines of he shouldn't have spoken to her the way she does. And she said, is that an apology? He said, no.
He says he regrets how we parted. Mm-hmm. And then, she just can't no matter what he tries, he isn't able at that point to give an apology. Mm-hmm. So obviously he's been thinking about it.
But she also says, do you want to explain your actions? And he said, you have no right to demand an explanation from me.
Like, she didn't demand it, but after the way he treated her, he should have given it. And then
after that, she goes into the room after talking with Augusta, because he leaves at that moment. He walks out.
Right. And then he goes to Colburn's open door, knocks on it, and he says, Miss Haywood, on reflection, the garden part, how I spoke to you, I cannot regret the intention of my words, but I regret the way I expressed them. Mm-hmm. And Charlotte says, is that an apology? And he says, I believe so, yes.
I think it's a good apology, because that's exactly what it was. It was his heart was trying to warn her.
Yeah, but anyway, and she says, then I accepted, even if I still don't understand it. So hint, hint, I need more information. Mm-hmm. And then she says, I wish to speak to you on Miss Markham's behalf. Mr. Colburn, every person contends with her past, but is it fair for yours to constrain Miss Markham's life and Miss Colburn's? There is a ball tonight which Augusta longs to attend, but knows she will not. How am I to ready her for society if her guardian keeps her so confined? It renders my position untenable. Mm-hmm. And then he says, well, it seems you have something to think about ahead of you. You will inform me once you have made a decision. Mm-hmm. And then Charlotte slams the door.
And it's interesting because in the beginning of the episode, when Allison is trying to convince her to go with her back to Willingdon, Charlotte's saying, I can't leave these girls. So I think that her saying it renders my position untenable, I think that she was basically thinking if I threaten him, he'll let her go. I don't think she was solely thinking that, but she had just said at the beginning of the episode she couldn't leave these girls, and now she's saying I can't stay here and work here if you're not going to let me.
Well, what she's saying is you're putting me in an impossible position. Mm-hmm.
But she was also saying that I can't stay.
Right. Oh yeah, definitely. If something doesn't change, I can't stay. I think that's entirely true.
Mm-hmm. I agree with that. And so the next time we see Colburn, we see him walking into the ball.
Right. Much to everybody's decide.
Yes.
Surprise.
He dances with Augusta first. You see that?
Right.
And that's fun and everything. And then he dances with Charlotte again. Or not again, but he dances with Charlotte.
Well, they exchange partners as part of the dance. That's how.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. That's right.
Yeah. And so then, I have this written down, their conversation. It was so good. Mm-hmm. What he says, let me find it. Sorry.
That's right. We're near the end of the episode, so you got to scroll all the way down in your notes again. You were just up at the top.
And I didn't have enough because I couldn't find a copy of the script. And so when they're dancing, and wait a minute, we have to back up. So when Augusta comes in and says, I don't know what kind of spell you've put on him. And Charlotte says, I'm sure it wasn't just my words. And Augusta says, I am sure it was. You must never leave us. And then Colburn walks up and she says, the next dance is about to begin. And Colburn says, I don't dance, right? And Charlotte says, it is a ball, Mr. Colburn. Why else are you here? And Colburn says, I'm asking myself the same question.
While smiling at Charlotte.
So the dance starts and Augusta is with Colburn, and then they change partners, and Colburn says to Charlotte, I wonder, have you given any consideration to your position? So how they left it, right? She had things to think about, and she says, a great deal. And he says, I hope we might persuade you to stay. And Charlotte says, why is that? And he says, Augusta and Lenora have been transformed by your influence. I cannot explain the effect you have had, Miss Haywood, on all of us. It's as if you've restored us back to life. We would be better. We would be bereft. What a great word, bereft. Mm-hmm. We would be bereft to lose you now. And she excuses herself as the dance ends. And
how much better of a speech is that than the stupid one Lennox gave her?
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's completely different.
So even if she was interested in Lennox, that speech right before seeing Lennox, done. Lennox has a good chance. Doesn't she go out and talk to somebody saying that she had feelings for someone, and she's like, but why? It was Allison. She was saying that she felt she felt in a way just now that she hadn't felt in a long time since Sydney. And Allison tells her it's okay to love another man. And she says, but why that man? And Allison says, why not him? Because Allison thinks she's talking about Lennox.
Well, and see, that conversation is held at the top of the stairs.
Where Lennox comes up.
When Lennox comes up, and Allison's all assuming, you know.
But Allison's back was to Lennox. So she didn't really know he was coming up. She did legitimately think it was about Lennox the whole time.
Right. And then she leaves Charlotte in this position with Lennox, excuse me, and whoever it is.
But when she storms down the stairs, Colburn is right there. What is it, Miss Haywood? And then he looks up and sees Lennox and says, what did he say to you? And then Tahira pointed this out on Twitter. She said the way he walks backward down the stairs, never taking his eyes off her once. Good. That's accurate. That is beautiful.
Yeah, that was good. And then when he says, kind of very gently, when Augusta comes up to them and she can see clearly something's wrong.
Yeah.
And he says, we're going home and Miss Haywood is coming with us, and she does not object.
Mm-hmm. Because they're having a little bit of a conversation before Augusta comes up. And he says, I tried to, essentially, I'm paraphrasing here, but he says, essentially, I tried to warn you about her. And she said, yeah, but all I had was his side. I only had what he told me. And he said, what did he tell you? And she tells him, this is what he told me. And that's when Augusta comes up. And he's like, we're going to leave. And she's going to come with us.
Right. And so they arrive. Home. They arrive at Hayrick Place, and they walk in, and Mrs. Wheatley is surprised about Charlotte being there. Right. Sorry. Just spacing out. What can I say? I don't have the excuse you have, though, about Charlotte being there, but she quickly, and she talks about what's been going on with Leo being up and down, you know, and then she comes running up to them. Did you dance? And how much? And wants all this information. And Mrs. Wheatley is sharp enough to realize that the two need to be left alone to talk.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so then he tells her his side of the story.
Which is that he and Lucy married very young. And it was not long after he inherited his house. He wanted to stay in the country. She wanted to stay in the height of London society. So she had a last season there. And then she kept making excuses for why she couldn't come back. He says, eventually my curiosity outweighed my pride. And I went there to see what it was. And then he found her with child, and it was Lennox's. And she was so shamed and so embarrassed that she was afraid to go home and to tell him and to explain all this happened. That's why she stayed so long. And he said that he could not forget the words that he said to her. They torment him to this day. And Charlotte grabs his hand, and he is so surprised by human affection that he can't speak for a minute. And she says, you are not to blame. You cannot do this to yourself. She also says in there, that is why you can't be in Leonora's presence without pain, because it's a constant reminder. And then we see poor, sweet Leonora.
I know, who's listening to this whole conversation. Yes. I know. I'm really concerned about where that's going to go in the next episode.
Really concerned, especially since she has this affinity for soldiers. Maybe she'll lose her affinity for soldiers. Maybe that's a possibility.
Well, except for he really is her father. I mean, that's what you just heard. And
how devastating that's going to be for her. Not only that Colburn's not her father, not only that this army military man is your father, but hearing your father can't even be around you because it physically causes him pain. Oh,
right. But hopefully this means they can eventually get over it.
Yeah.
Especially with Charlotte there. Mm-hmm. And so
Charlotte grabs him by the hand and says, you cannot let this impact you anymore. You can't torment yourself. And again, I'm paraphrasing. You can't torment yourself anymore, because that will take away from your future, which, as far as I can see it, has the potential to be very dear indeed. And he leans in, he stares at her. He's so surprised to hear this kind of compassion and comfort and affection come from this girl who just came into their lives and shattered every illusion that they had been keeping, and breathed very life into that mausoleum of a house and made it a house of laughter and sound and music. He cannot believe that she's saying these things to him, and he's so amazed. And then he leans in, and they share a very agreed upon kiss. They're both very much in agreement about what was going on right then. And that's where it ends. Yeah. It ends with the kiss.
Yep. So it's probably good it ended right then because you're almost out of time.
I am, yeah. So next week we talked about what we think is going to happen next week as we went. So we'll see if those things come to pass. Do you have any theories real quick you want to throw out for next week? For the final episode?
I don't, other than what we've already talked about. I just can't wait. I can't wait to watch episode 6. And I don't know what kind of cliffhanger they're going to leave us on for season 3.
Because you know it's going to be one, or at least one. Maybe several.
Hopefully not all of these will be so hanging.
I am excited to see how Colborne and Charlotte are going to be with each other the next day, though.
Yeah.
I can't wait to see that.
One other thought I had was that Charlotte, I mean, what are the Parkers and everybody thinking? Charlotte just disappeared. So we'll see what happens.
It's true. I didn't even think about that. How's she gonna get home? Unless Wheatley goes with her, but I doubt that's gonna happen.
In the carriage, I would assume
that would be scandalous if just he alone chaperoned her back to her house in a carriage alone.
Yeah. Well,
so we'll
maybe
see.
He and Mrs. Wheatley will go or something. But anyway,
we'll see how it goes.
Or they'll just avoid it. One of the two.
Maybe she'll walk home. She's been walking. I doubt after that kiss, Colborne will let her walk home at night. I doubt that will happen.
No.
There's no way that Colborne is going to let anything happen to her now.
Nope, that's right.
So next
that was obvious even before the kiss.
Yes, that's true. So next week is the final episode of season 1, and then we will go into a transition of.
You mean season 2?
Season 2, final episode of season 2. Man, it's such a bummer. This went so fast. It went so fast. So we will be, after the recaps, moving on to the character spotlights and breaking down character dynamics, just like we did last season. Hopefully we'll get some interviews for you. I don't know how that's going to work out. I don't know if we'll be able to get any for you. I can't guarantee anything, but I'm trying. So we'll be looking for that. Join our Sanderson Facebook group. We've gotten a lot of people joining there lately. So it's the Sanderson Chronicles, Sanderson Family Fan Club. We try to keep it drama-free. We try to keep it happy. We aren't all Sydney eccentric. We're just in love with this show, and we're in love with this fandom and this town of Sanderson. So join us over there and join the conversation. I have not been, since I got my diagnosis, I have not been very active on Twitter and Instagram, but we do have one under the Sanderson Chronicles. And you can email me at the.sandersonchronicles@gmail.com if you want to share your thoughts on the show. And Erica sent me, I haven't read it yet. She sent me an email, but she was very, very nice and put spoilers for episode 6 in there, very big. So I would see it right away. Haven't read that yet. But after Sunday, I'm going to read it. And then we'll discuss that and respond to you about that. So I get those emails. I respond when I can. Sometimes I'm limited, but I do try. So reach out to us there, and we will see you in a week when we recap episode 6. Bye, guys.
Bye-bye.